Next on our calendar is Representative Carter on House Bill 2371. And Representative Carter, you have my apologies. I told you you'd go earlier, and the chair neglected to do what he said he was to do. So please accept the apologies of the chair and the committee. You're recognized on House Bill 2371.
All right.
We have a motion and a second. Representative Carter, your bill is properly before us. Do you have any amendments?
Do not.
Okay. Please
House
proceed
Bill
with the bill.
2371 ends forced annexation in the state of Tennessee.
Any questions? Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Carter.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Can you give us just a little bit more detail about your bill, please?
I can. Currently, there are 4 methods of annexation under the statute in Tennessee. 3 involve consent or referendum of the people. This bill simply goes into the 4th one, which is annexation by ordinance, which does not require the consent of the parties nor allow a vote by the parties being annexed. And we delete that from the statute. This bill requires you to choose, do people have the right to vote or not?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Carter, how does this affect the recommendation from TASSER?
The recommendation of TASSER, which I think you serve on now, and I served on, the TASSER recommendation was it would continue the moratorium for another year and study many factors. I agree with 99% of that recommendation by TASSER. However, the right to vote is one that was determined at the formation of our country, its Constitution, and every war fought since then. I don't know how in the world another year's study is going to change a person's right to vote. So as to the other issues, I'll support that bill in studying PC 1101 and other issues between cities and counties. Those do need to be worked out, but the right to vote is respectfully not one of them.
Thank you, Mr. But can you just give us the quick and dirty? If this legislation is passed, how will it affect that recommendation from TASSER?
It won't. It will just all it will remove from it is their decision as to whether or not we should have the right to vote, which they've already said that they think we should in the report, so that we should come in line with other states. You know, we're only one of 3 that do it this way, and so their report indicates this completely. You haven't been on it long enough to have gone through it and seen it, but it's there.
I haven't been on long enough to go through and seen it.
No, I'm just saying you didn't have the benefit of going through the whole process. You will this summer as we go through many issues, very complex between cities and counties. Those need to be studied and ruled on. I'm not addressing any of those. Merely the right to vote on annexation is all this bill confronts.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Representative.
Chairman Floyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Carter, I'm so thankful to see this bill before this committee. I represent a district that was annexed into the city of Chattanooga back in the 70s. Those people don't have water up there. They had one fire truck that was about 15 to 20 minutes away from this one particular section. When they got there, they had 20 minutes pumping capacity. These people have paid City of Chattanooga taxes for 30 or 40 years. And for what? They had no choice. They didn't want to go in the city to begin with. But they didn't have that choice. There's actually places in my district where you have to go down into Georgia and then come back up into the district. And then nobody gets to vote on if somebody decides that at the city level, well, we're just going to de-annex these guys. But they've been collecting taxes all these years. I don't know if you've ever been involved in them, but you know, all of a sudden, and I've got some folks in my family right now that are experiencing this. They got about $1,400 in taxes on their house right now. Now, this time next year, they'll have $2,800 worth of taxes. And not one thing, not one, is going to change. Their garbage service will be better. It's better now than it will be if the city takes it over. They got police protection. They got fire protection. The only thing that changes, they're going to be paying about $125 a month in city taxes, and nothing changes. And that is not right. Right now, you'll never own a piece of property in the county. You only lease it from the county. You pay a lease agreement. If you don't pay your lease agreement, you'll find out who owns your property. But folks, it is not right to have these annexation programs like they've been, because the city has used them to try to come out and actually form metropolitan government, because there wasn't going to be nothing left. So I appreciate this bill so much, Representative Carter, and I wish I could vote for it 10 times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman Hill, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Carter, for bringing this legislation. We talked in finance yesterday about this fundamental right that we to vote, and I think it's extremely appropriate that this committee, this subcommittee, and hopefully when this passes out, full committee next week, the same committee that dealt with whether or not people get to vote on something like wine and grocery stores, and now we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum and have people hopefully have the right to vote on whether or not they want their property annexed. Now, there is a huge difference between those two, but I am very glad that this piece of legislation is moving through this committee because, as I stated in finance yesterday, and I've stated numerous times, publicly and privately, it is beyond me that Tennessee, the great state we live in, is one of 3 states that still does not allow people to vote on whether or not they want to have their land and their home taken by a city. And so I'm very appreciative of you bringing this legislation, and I know, because you and I have talked privately, I know you have worked very hard, not just on this bill, but on this issue for your people at home, and I know you've been working on it all summer and for the last year, and so I just want to publicly just say thank you to you, because I know you've worked really, really hard on this.
Thank you, Chairman Hill.
Representative Dale Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Pronser, for bringing this bill. And as we know, we've talked, and it's not here to beat you up or anything. My concern is just to bring out a point or two that maybe we could even continue to look at TASER. On the other hand, my other gentleman over there said didn't have any service or anything. Well, in my territory, we are probably just the opposite. We have really expanded out and give services to people that are outside the city. What I would like for them to look at is, like, I'll give you a quick example. Down one road, or one road there, one side of the road is in the city. The other side of the road or the street is not inside the city, but yet it has all the city services. The police even answer calls. The fire department even comes. I would just like for them to look at that and see if there's anything that they can do. Now, I'm sure that those people probably don't want to vote themselves inside the city, and I understand that, and that's their right. That's their right, and to pay those taxes. But if we could maybe talk to TASER and sit down and look and see, and maybe give them the cities a little guidance on that, is to make sure that there's no animosity or anything comes about that you've got these services. Well, I'm going to cut, your protection out or whatever like this, because it is a problem in our city. I talked to the sponsor about this beforehand. I told him I was going to bring this up to make it a point of matter, and the cities are providing the problems. And I am in, as we say, a rock and hard place. I was on city council. I understand where they're coming from, and I also understand where my people come from. And I just want it to be known that the city council that I was on, even though the law was on the books, every last referendums we had for annexation have been by referendum. So, but just understand that there is county people receiving city services that some way or another, if they are asked to come into the city, that we have some kind of ruling, or maybe we could put this off and give ourselves 6 months to look at this. If it goes into law maybe on the 14th of July or whenever, then maybe have to the 1st of 2015. I'm just offering that up as a suggestion. Just want to bring this to record, but I appreciate your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Parkinson, you do seek recognition? You're recognized.
Thank you, sir. I didn't expect it to happen that fast, but I appreciate it.
We're trying to move it along.
Yes, sir. Representative Carter, can you how does a city recoup the resources from the infrastructure that's built into areas that they were looking at annexing?
It's very simple. The law tells them exactly how to do it and no other way. Those services must support themselves. End of the story. That's exactly what the law says. You run water, you run sewer extraterritorially outside your municipal limits. The statute says it must fund itself. You don't look to the taxes that would come from serving those areas. The service fees charged for that and that alone. And what you will find, and I know you were in the last 2 or 3 meetings because of Ms. DeBerry's untimely demise, one of the things we studied for many days was the 200% markup up in Upper East Tennessee, where people that don't live in the city have to pay a 200% premium to get the service. And I think the city charges them $783,000 to keep their books. So if that's the way it works, that's the way it works. But the statute says those services must stand on their own and their own alone. If we're going to go back and say they get to assess it to taxes, we're going to have to change those statutes.
Right. So should an outerlying or proposed annex area decide that they don't want to be annexed after those services but those services have already been provided? And what would happen if the city decided that we don't want to provide those services anymore, because that was our intent in providing those services based on that annexation? Will we be in another? Let me, if you don't mind, will we be in another quandary here where the courts would have to be called in again to decide, or this body would have to be called in again to decide on how that's to be addressed, or how do we do that? How do we get around that?
I assume that the city followed the law, and that the fees coming from those utility extensions pay for themselves. Now, why would the cities, figuring in their profit, their overhead, why would they turn those services off and hurt themselves? I don't think that will happen.
And I'm not speaking for the cities. I'm just looking at possibilities and scenarios that because I think their intent when they provided those services was providing those services for what was going to become part of the city. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just asking, trying to, so I can see this thing holistically.
Sure. Oh, I understand that, and I appreciate that. And you'll be a valuable addition, and you'll very much enjoy the study. You will. But I assume that the cities followed the law, and that's not an issue. You all are talking like this bill ends annexation. It ends forced annexation. That's the only difference. So I'm saying people have a right to say what happens to their property. And some of us think that we're politicians, we know what's best, and people shouldn't get to vote. We just act by fiat. So
and Representative, I understand.
Got to pick a side to be on.
Representative, I understand the spirit of your legislation and why you're bringing it. At the same time, I also understand the gratitude that comes from citizens when they once had a dirt road and now they have a paved road. When they once had no drainage and now they have drainage. When they once had no lights and now they have lights. And then once those services are provided, then we turn around and snub the individuals that provided those services. It's kind of and there's two sides to this, and I just think that and I hope that you would consider, even if it's for a moment, to continue we send it to TASER for a reason. We send it to TASER for a reason, and I think that TASER they're very diligent. Well, we are very diligent in looking at this issue. Unfortunately, it was such a complex issue that it wasn't one that could be solved in the amount of time that we initially tried to solve it, of course. And so we're looking at extending the moratorium so that we can continue. And that and coming out of that extension of the moratorium may be give you the specific direction that you're going in. I don't know at this point. But so I would hope that you might consider letting TASER do its work and we continue to extend that moratorium and get the right answers for everyone involved.
Well, let's make sure that my position is abundantly clear. I support TASER completely. I look forward to the study of the complex issues. The right to vote is not one of them. And no study in the world is going to change a man or a woman's mind about whether a person has the right to vote on their property. The relationships between the governments is what 1101. See, this is not 1101. This is annexation. 1101 talks about growth, urban growth, the relationship between cities and counties. That's where we're going this summer on TASER. So I think the report is clear that Tennessee needs to come into the mainstream of American thought that people have a right to vote. That's what TASER said in their report.
Do you have a question? Representative Parkinson?
I have
question?
just one last comment, and I'm done. Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge, I appreciate it.
Please, we've got others
Yes.
who want to ask questions, so please.
I just want, for the record, to know that I agree with you in the fact that Tennesseans should have the right to vote on multiple issues that come before this body.
And
Thank
this
you.
bill is limited solely to that. I'm not saying we won't do a TASER study. We're not going back and look at those complex issues. I'm just saying this part of it needs to be handled today and taken care of.
Chairman Miller, do you have a question for the sponsor? Please.
Well, for the sponsor, it may be a question to you, whoever can answer this. Factually, what impact would this, if any, your bill have on urban growth boundaries?
No effect.
No effect whatsoever.
None. Now, the TASER study that's coming next summer may. This does not. See, those were established in 98, 99, 2000. I'm not sure when those were done. Those exist. This doesn't touch them, not even under the same part of the code.
So what do you mean TASER may?
TASER is going to study
Study
1101, PC 1101, which establishes the urban growth boundaries. So that'll be looking forward, what are we going to do with urban growth boundaries?
So whatever study they come back with what you're saying, it wouldn't have impact on your legislation.
That's correct.
Here at this point.
That's right.
It wouldn't on any.
We won't affect them. They won't affect this.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask the council their interpretation of the bill and what impact?
Chairman Miller, you can ask the council anything you'd like as long as it's germane to the bill.
Same question to council. Based on your understanding of the legislation and your understanding of urban
Council,
our
you're
current law.
recognized.
Sure. The portion of that the bill amend, that part of the code that the bill amended is in 651. In 658 is the part of the code that deals with urban growth boundaries. This bill affects the method of annexation that may be accomplished, but it does not affect the boundaries that the Planning Commission set when they established the urban growth boundaries and the planning and the planned areas and the county boundaries.
Okay. So again, if, for an example, City of Memphis has this urban growth area, they have that already established. If today they wanted to annex, they could do that even if this bill was signed by the governor tomorrow or next week or next month.
They could do that by they could do that by any method except for the method where the city initiates it on their own initiative and does it without vote. So there are currently 4 methods. If the bill was signed by the governor tomorrow, then the city could annex, but only by 3 of the 4 methods that are currently in the law. They could not annex without the property owner's consent.
Upon passage of this.
Yes.
So this would impact. I'm trying. Okay. It would not impact it, even if bill passes, governor signs it. Memphis, under its current law, under the current growth boundary law, would still be in a position to annex that property.
Yes, they just could not do so without the consent or the vote of the people affected by that annexation.
They would have to hold a referendum
Or
for that one to apply.
Or the people that were affected could petition them to do so. They could hold a referendum to allow people to vote, or the third method is yes.
Okay.
The third method, so forced annexation at the request to be annexed, the consensual annexation. Petition is one method. Consensual annexation is the second method, where the property owner asks, and then the third would be where it's authorized by referendum, where the people vote on the annexation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Durham, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor of this bill moving to full committee say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. Goes to full committee.
Thank you, members and Mr. Chairman.